Hello, everyone, and of course, first, can I express my gratitude in you taking the time to attend this WaterAid talk? Both myself and my organisation appreciate you taking the time. My name's Ben Fielder. I'm here from the WaterAid Speaker Network, and I'm going to talk to you today about a number of different things. So, time, money, the environment, and inequality. Now, imagine you're surprised. Don't worry, I can understand it considering you came here to learn about water. But as we go through, I hope you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to show you a couple of ratios just here. I'd like you to take a quick guess just in your head at what each one might mean. So clicking over bottom left hand side, 1 in 3. Just very quick couple of seconds to think about that. Now, that's the number of people globally who do not have access to a television. Now, can you imagine the last year or so without that information coming through? And, on normal days, it's irritating on one of those nights where you can't watch one of your shows because it's not working. You might be lucky enough that never happens. But that information, getting across to people, absolutely crucial, for example, in the last year or so, especially. The Clockwork Radio, in fact, won numerous awards because of that ability to deliver information across large areas where things like electricity are scarce. So, weather, diseases, all of that sort of information, without having a TV or that information channel, if you like, then you've got very, very little chance. Imagine not having access to that during this pandemic. Learning how to wash your hands and imagine not being able to wash your hands at all. Quite the thought. Quite the thought. So another one in 3 on the right hand side. Going to give you a couple of seconds to think about this one. Okay, that's 1 in 3 do not have access to the internet across the world. So same thing, that information is power. We've got it readily available at our fingertips at all times. But I couldn't work efficiently in my current role without a decent internet connection. I couldn't support myself effectively. So you've got to think about the businesses, the productivity that will be able to flourish much quicker, more efficient, with more efficient communication. Ideas to be shared, inventions to be invented, discoveries to be made. We make leaps and bounds by sharing all of this so easy. So you imagine what we lose every day, as an entire world, due to that lack of internet and that lack of so much potential. So a lot lost, if you like, a lot of potential lost. 1 in 4. Let's have a look. What do we think? That's in fact the number of people in the world without access to a decent toilet. So I think you can understand the gravity of this situation. Around 3.5 million people a year die globally from water-related diseases. Now that's more than AIDS, measles, and malaria combined. 3/4 of those people are children, and to add to that, 1 in 10 do not have clean water up close to their home. 1 in 4 health centres globally don't have access to clean water. So I think you can appreciate the concept here. The others we were just discussing pale into insignificance when you look at this one. So what does it mean? How frustrating would it be not to have a toilet you can use or tap? Now, for too many people, getting a drink, going to the toilet, and staying clean daily struggle without access to toilets and taps. So this is why we say, everyone everywhere to have clean water, decent toilet, and good hygiene. We do mean everybody. This is a deadly crisis where people don't have water and sanitation. Disease spreads quickly. Around 310,000 children under 5 every year from diarrheal diseases die as a result. That's over 800 children a day. 1 child every 2 minutes. That should not be normal. So when we are talking about sanitation, really we're talking about toilets and clean, accessible toilets, not just maintaining them, but also ensuring people use them. And all of the infrastructure, all of the service, and that involves the entire chain because they really are incredible. And the best thing they do, they do more than you can imagine, but the best thing they do is help people have better health, dignity, and safety. And we're going to look at that in a second. So it's best to work in threes. Threes help us to remember things. So we're going to look at these 3 now: health, dignity, and safety. In terms of health, diarrhea is one of the 3 most common killers of young children globally, along with pneumonia and malaria. But most of these deaths could be prevented by clean water, sanitation, and good hygiene. And, we're talking about hand washing with soap here. In terms of dignity, emotion we're all familiar with. It's a universal value. We want to be clean, be able to go to the toilet in privacy, manage our periods, for example, without being embarrassed or feeling shame about it. In terms of safety, managing without a toilet, it can make people more vulnerable to abuse violence, and it's, that's not good for anyone, but particularly for women and girls who are, do feel more at risk, and people who are older or disabled, they may feel more unsafe. Having the toilet doesn't end the violence at all, but it certainly does reduce a person's exposure to risk. So I think you now have an idea of the problems we're discussing. So I'd like to introduce you to WASH. This is a WaterAid initiative, and we focus on water, sanitation, and hygiene like it's life or death, because it is. Now, it's not enough to approach the issue with a one-size-fits-all approach. Numerous reasons for water crises all over the world, and as a result, flexible and sustainable solutions are required. A lack of sanitation facilities, understanding of hygiene, lack of clean, reliable access to water, they all contribute to larger problems. So things like education, nutrition, female empowerment, child and maternal health, food security, housing, urban planning, hygiene service, all of those are affected by that crucial resource, water. And we want to change that for everyone, everywhere. We know that improved access to water, sanitation, and hygiene has a positive effect on many other areas that are essential for a healthy, productive life. And achieving universal wash access for everyone, everywhere is also key to achieving many of the other sustainable development goals. So, what are the sustainable development goals, I hear you wondering? Well, Sustainable Development Goals, or global goals, are a collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed as a blueprint, really, to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. They were set up in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly. Effectively, we're intending to reach those targets by the year 2030. Now, we look at goal 6 specifically out of the 17 because we believe it underpins all of the others. Goal 6 aims to ensure everybody has sustainably managed safe water and sanitation. That includes the right to water, which entitles everybody to sufficient, safe, acceptable, physically accessible and affordable water, both for personal and domestic use. The rights to sanitation, which is the other right we're looking at in terms of that goal 6, that entitles everybody to sanitation services that provide privacy, they ensure dignity, they're physically accessible, they're affordable, they're safe, hygienic, secure, and of course we need to ensure that they're also socially and culturally acceptable. There's, again, as we say, there's no one size fits all approach. The good thing about having goal 6 in there, and especially with its specific targets on water, sanitation, and hygiene, is that we know world leaders understand the importance of making these essentials normal, especially for the world's most marginalised people. Now, as I said, goal 6 underpins at least some of the other goals, specifically these 5 that come before. So goal 1, there's no way you're going to eradicate extreme poverty without access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's consistently found to have those significant economic benefits. In terms of 2, inadequate wash, sanitation and hygiene is closely associated with undernutrition. So, things like diarrheal diseases, parasites, they prevent people from absorbing nutrients from food. And that does permanently damage children's long-term physical and, of course, mental development as well. So without water, another one that's very, very difficult to achieve. Good health and well-being. Clean water, decent toilets, good hygiene. If they're not a normal part of daily life, the impacts on health and well-being are absolutely devastating. Fatal diseases, cholera, blinding, trachoma, things like that, where the diseases are transmitted through water, hands, soil, food contaminated by human feces. It gets spread because you need properly protected water sources, toilets, and good hygiene habits. And in some of these places, they're either absent or inadequate. Goal 4, again, underpinned access to wash, key to universal access to education. About 31% of schools globally don't have clean water, 37% globally lack decent toilets. And of course, when children don't have to walk long distances to collect water, they will, of course, have more time to attend school. And then 5, gender equality. It's a bit of a curveball, this one, but it does have a direct impact on the health and the well-being of everybody. But for women and girls in particular, the absence of adequate sanitation, menstrual hygiene facilities, and things like that at school, that often leads to absenteeism, dropping out, water collection again. That tends to lay more heavily on girls than it does boys. So it really does again contribute to that gender inequality. So you can see here how we believe that goal 6 underpins those other 5 goals. Now, I'd like to just take a second here at this point to tell you effectively why I chose WaterAid when I did. So I looked around, I wanted to help, I've had a reasonably good life, time to give something back. It took me a long time to figure out what to do because there was just, so many problems. I didn't know where to start at all. So I wanted to try and have some sort of effect, any positive change that I could. Started having a look around and found things like, the environment is potentially in trouble. So I wondered about that. Inequality is rather an issue at the moment. So the list goes on and on. So I started with poverty. And I know there's a number of causes for poverty. I'm not in any way diminishing their validity, but one of the contributing factors appears to be the disempowerment or lack of empowerment for women. Now, it interested me, so I looked a little further and I discovered that wherever women were empowered, poverty tended to shrink. Literally, whole floors, economic floors of given village, region, country substantially raised when women were empowered in that society, and to a remarkable extent as well. So my first thought, how can I help? I looked at the conditions needed and I found the one of the basic but crucial requirements that we're talking about: sanitation. Safe, reliable, clean sanitation resources. It's especially important for women and young girls, and obviously supporting in their empowerment. So I just want to watch something now that goes through this in a little bit more detail. Now, I can assure you can appreciate that video. Today, more than 200 hours, as it said in there, will be spent by girls and women walking for water. So without decent toilets, again, women's health, hygiene and safety is, of course, at risk. Now, carrying full water containers, for example, just the actual job of doing it, they're, 20 kilograms, 20 bags of sugar. They're carrying them on their heads, their backs, and it really does contort their spine. It leads problems in childbirth later in life. It is incredibly grueling and difficult job. They're often doing it for hours a day. It makes them late for school, unable to work. It puts them at a massive disadvantage to men and boys. And even when they collect the water, drinking, cooking, and washing with it exposes them to deadly diarrheal diseases every day. So it's really, really important in terms of good hygiene and safety for girls and women. Without clean water, for example, soap or a toilet, keeping just yourself and your family healthy is going to be incredibly difficult. This leads me on to why water is so important. It's not just for the literal act of survival, but also the surrounding factors affected by the lack of such a crucial resource. Health, for example, having clean water close by saves lives. So it can help babies make it through the first vulnerable 5 years, give new mums the best chance of survival, and gives everybody a fighting chance of avoiding waterborne diseases. In terms of livelihood, clean water gives people the time, resources to find jobs, learn skills, run successful business, help them break free from poverty and change their lives for good. Now, in terms of time, again, most of the burden falls mainly on girls and women. But if they only need to carry it a few steps to the nearest tap, that time's freed up. gives the girls a chance to play, go to school, and enables women to work and look after their families. Really, really important. Education, again, spending time in the classroom, something that many children can only dream of. And when they no longer have to collect water every day, the dream can come true. It opens up a world of new opportunities. Dignity, again, something we can all agree with. Clean water, we take so much, so many of us take it for granted, but being able to wash regularly in a clean, private place is absolutely essential to lead a dignified life. We never get tired of talking about water. Why? Because quite simply, we don't live without it. And because every day we get to hear incredible stories showing how water and enables people to unlock their potential and, of course, change their lives forever. Now, it doesn't come without its difficulties. You can probably see from the slide here that this is quite the extended process. It consists of various factors, actors, relationships, barriers, weaknesses. The entire system really does, have to come together in order to, not inhibit that sustainable, lasting, and universal wash solution. So, we define that wash system as all of the behaviours, the policies, the processes, resources, interactions and institutions necessary for that delivering inclusive, lasting, universal access to wash. Now, that also does mean understanding that existing complex system, component parts, it's not one size fits all. As I said, there are differing social, economic, political, environmental context. You have to identify the barriers and work to address them through things like policies, processes, resources. Really, really quite complicated stuff in terms of the wash system itself. There's even, not just political situations, not just systemic situations where barriers are created, but also, for example, some cultures, even talking about the toilet could be considered a taboo subject. So lots and lots of barriers where we look to work, identify and address those situations. We do work in 26 different countries where permanent institutions, we've got them there to deliver that kind of sustainable and scalable wash, but they are generally underfunded, unfortunately. Some of them are undercapacitated, and you have also, they do lack accountability to some segments or to all segments of the population. Government-led planning, monitoring, budgeting processes, sometimes they can be weak. Insufficient finance, say, allocated to the right maintenance, behavioural change, increasingly difficult, and of course, making sure that that sanitation chain is complete. So lots of barriers that we do have to come up against. But one of the things that I did consider when I was choosing WaterAid was, they weren't just solving a problem by creating another one. Sustainability is absolutely crucial, and that's reflected in the way that we work. So for each kind of case, if you like, for each individual project, you have to start with analysing the context. You have to start by looking at this critical starting point of, what are the barriers, where are the barriers environmentally, politically, culturally for this specific instance. And once we've done that and analysed the context, we do look at working in partnerships. So many different actors that can include government institutions, communities, NGOs. We partner in with actors in sectors like health and education, anything that's relevant to WASH effectively. Now, once we've done that and we've analysed the context and we start to work with partners, it's all about that kind of the things sort of WaterAid is has a kind of stereotypical that delivering services, that direct provision of actual water supply, sanitation and hygiene. So it's not just an end to itself. That's the important thing. It's a means to achieving that transformational change. Okay, so it has to ensure the kind of active participation of communities. Because if they create ownership, people are able to create ownership of what they're doing, it will of course contribute to the sustainability of it. Capacity development, again, ongoing process. It involves training, mentoring, knowledge sharing, exchange visits, research. When we do the context analysis, we should be able to see the capacity gaps in that particular sector, and then we need to identify stakeholders, people that needed to meet the roles and responsibilities. We help to upskill them. So, for example, setting up those water communities or communities to manage the operation and maintenance of water points. But it's all about sustaining, building, and to continuing to grow at that community level with the support of WaterAid. Advocacy, we are going to be talking about in a bit more detail in a second, but at all levels, it's really, really important to make sure it's a political priority for governments. It will not improve this water situation without strong commitment by governments to improve the situation, national and regional levels, both in terms of policy and in practice. Now, this needs to go full circle. This is a cycle, if you like. So there should be that continuous critical analysis, which leads you back into that kind of analysing the context. So we look at what's working, we look at what needs to change, formal and informal, research, learning, reflection, monitoring, evaluation, that kind of thing. And those lessons learned should feed back into that program design. Now, in terms of the solution, in terms of advocacy and accountability, we are going to be looking at some of the ways we improve situations of people. Like to introduce you to Rhoda from Malawi. She's telling her story to her local community leaders. Now, when we talk about advocacy, we're talking about addressing structural issues, such in terms of the water and sanitation crisis. So we do know that a big reason that people don't necessarily have access to clean water and safe toilets isn't necessarily all technological. Some of it is political. In terms of a lack of a political priority, it tends to be quite low on the political agenda, and that means it's not always if you like prioritized, if for want of a better word. So what we're looking at is, an ultimate vision of a world where all governments deliver, maintain their own water, sanitation services, things like that, and that's the only way it's going to be truly sustainable. Ultimately, the wash crisis will only be solved if the people with power to make change, politicians, governments, take action. So we do challenge governments to do that, to commit resources to invest in water and in sanitation. Really, really important, because it's about examining where power and influence are held and working to redress that balance so that everybody has access to their rights. It's not about charity, it's about justice. It really is. Okay, so in terms of good hygiene practices, so again, this sanitation doesn't just come down to laying a pipe and disappearing. It's all about ensuring it's sustainable and continuous, and that of course requires education. So you can see a number of examples here where WaterAid is actually working with local communities and actually showing them the exact right way to ensure that their hands are sanitized and completely clean. And we've got some really nice examples here of some of the projects that we've done in terms of the education. So, for example, the hygiene, teaching hygiene there you can see in Nepal, where we're looking at mothers learning how to protect infants from entirely preventable diseases, just using the right sanitation practices. Up on the top right hand side there you can see Bangladesh, where they play blue hand games to kind of help students understand the importance of hand washing. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the adverts for the coronavirus, where they kind of do the heat thing wherever you touch, something similar to that. And a really nice one, in fact, in Nepal there, the participatory photography projects, where we followed up a year later as well, so 2016 and 2017. Really, really nice way of bringing to life the actual work that was going, the reality of the communities that people are living in, especially with regard to kind of the taboos around menstruation, sanitation, and the like. But it was a really nice insight into people's personal perspectives, both on general hygiene, sanitation, etc. Really good way of breaking that conventional thinking around periods and menstrual hygiene, specifically in that school and that community. So some really interesting projects, really, really successful stuff going on. Now we'll talk to you about the kind of more technological solutions. I have talked to you a lot about the policies and the government advocacy and the kind of teaching and training, but we also are known for actually bringing and delivering a service in terms of water. So I am going to take you through a couple of technologies, but just before I do, I'm going to let this video explain all about WaterAid and sustainability. some amazing work going on there. And, as you can see, service delivery, it has to ensure that participation of communities getting involved. That creating that ownership, creating that sustainability, and that's the really important part. So, to give you an idea of the kind of technologies that we're looking at here, you can see, for example, that you've got these very sustainable, very easy to manage, very easy to replace systems, and they're also very adept to their environment. So the water point mapping, I do want to draw your attention to, is really quite an interesting kind of GPS information sharing. Where are these water points in relation to each other? So where should we put new ones, for example? But the really, nicely simple ideas in terms of those gravity flow systems where you bring water down from a higher height using gravity itself, rainwater harvesting, hand pumps. These are all sustainable and maintainable by the population and the communities, solutions to getting clean and filtered and fresh sanitized water, if you like. Now, next, you can see as well some other examples, really nice examples. Composting latrine is absolutely brilliant. We're going to show you a quick video on that in a sec. And you can see on the right-hand side, this really important in terms of who the facilities are accessible to. School toilets are crucially important. That's really, really important, considering that 1/3 globally don't necessarily have them. And of course, ensuring that disabled people are able to access those facilities as well is, again, absolutely important. Everyone, everywhere, and we mean it. Water kiosks. Now, this and the composting latrine kind of leads me on to some of the effects of having clean water, where we talked about earlier about successful businesses and people being able to move themselves up slightly using the idea of water itself, or the result of the actual technology going in, or the service delivery. And just to kind of highlight that point, I'm going to introduce you to Flossie, and we're going to have a quick watch of how getting a composting latrine has helped Flossie's life. Again, fantastic work. It does not cease to impress me, the difference that can be made from such a kind of exponentially, it's a small gift and a huge result from it. Now, substantial change does occur when people are able to help themselves, and this brings me on to time and money. I did say I would talk about it. So in terms of time and money, let's look at WaterAid and the way that the money is actually utilised. So 6p goes on delivering services. So that's the kind of technological thing that we were just talking about, making sure that the water is actually delivered. But the fundraising governance, if you have a look at some of those figures there in terms of supporting partners to deliver water, sanitation and hygiene, influencing policy in water, just general kind of governments and institutions on the left-hand side, a lot of money goes towards that. So, time and money, entirely fungible. They can be used for more than one thing, but really crucial as to where we actually allocate that money and how we use it. Really, really important. Now, if you do think in terms of how much goes where, we expect to turn every pound we invest in fundraising to almost about £4 that we put back into our work. So that 26p that you can see, sorry, 24p that you can see, becomes sort of £1 4 pence, if you like. So how we use that time and that money is absolutely crucial. Investing to make sure that we get more, and then we can invest more into our work effectively. Now, to put this in more sort of concrete examples, specific amounts, what they can in turn provide, you can see some examples on the slide. Relatively small amounts having exponentially higher value. If you think that 2,200 that provides a school with water, that may go on to support generations of children's education, lifting living standards across the board for years to come. The margins of return on that initial £2,000 investment are actually, potentially incalculable. You may never know. And just to kind of hammer that point home, we're going to have a look at an average day for a young lady, Lala, who lives in Madagascar, and she does her water walk.
At 1 mile, I wish my day could start like yours. On a gentle walk to school and later to a shopping mall, a party or a local park. At 2 miles, I contemplate what it's like at your place. To turn a tap and see the flow of water for a clean of teeth, a drink, a shower, and a wash of clothes. At 3 miles, I think of you. Perhaps you're in a swimming pool or eating at a restaurant with water bottles on your table. At 4 miles, I ask myself whether you ever given idle thoughts about my trek through scorching heat. To the spring, the riverbank, a muddy hole where I collect the dirty water I must drink. I start the 4-mile journey home. A full container on my back. Sometimes I daydream about other children in other countries far away from here. I wonder what the distance is of their daily water walk.
A very different day. Now, as I said before, time is fungible. You can use it for more than one thing, but only if you have the resources to use. And it does seem to me that it's running out. Just a small donation will give her and many others back much needed time to go to school, time to learn, share with her family, time to play. Children should play. I think we can all agree on that. Earlier in my career, I was a primary school teacher. I learned about children's development through play as well as other things, obviously. Hugely important according to all of the literature, and that goes all the way through to adulthood. So social situations, turn taking, rule following, a goal to aspire to, how to deal with setbacks, we learn it all through play. So alternatively put, if we fail the children, we fail the adults. Now, I'm not saying they're easy problems to solve, but we can make a start. Let's ensure that time taken each day is not spent on 8-mile round trips to a water source, where the dangers of drinking from that source are terrifyingly apparent. Let's say we can give back that time to a young lady for schooling and playing, ensure that her and many like her have the opportunity for a better life. Now, I'm not saying we can do it all, but we can definitely give a fighting chance. And people are very, very tough. We can live in some of the most inhospitable places on the planet, and we learn to grow, we learn to adapt. There's evidence all of around us. We just need to give them a fighting chance. £3 a month to give that fighting chance is all people have ever needed to lift themselves up. £3 a month. Have you got anything better to do with your time and your money today? Just as an aside to that as well, as populations become more wealthy, become more educated, they tend to give a lot more concern to the environment. And again, work towards cleaner, more sustainable living. So, for example, if anyone recycles, once you get survival out of the way, it's much, much easier to work on the global problems from a position of strength. So, better sanitation leads to more equality, leads to economic growth, improved quality of life, leads to concern, growing action on the environment, and of course, how to sustain it. So, £3 a month for saving the world. What have you got to do today that's better than that? These are just so there's some wonderfully inspiring students there from Ethiopia in elementary school. They've taken the time with the support of the community to start kind of a water committees and the like with a 14-year-old named Adisay who manages the club's fundraising and other financial activities. So another story of success there as well. But effectively, it's about education and using resources that are fit for purpose to change a life or many lives dramatically over short periods of time. The community members of WaterAid here, as you can see, we're rather at the pond sand filter. Their life has been irreversibly changed by a project that we had there, which we were able to filter some water through using some of the kind of the chambers containing sand, gravel, etc., but easily accessible resources that they're able to get. And again, another really good example of success. Now, the difference that you can make today, I'm going to leave you, ladies and gents, with a call to arms. Time and money, time or money, either will do. It's been an absolute pleasure to present to you today. I'd like to thank you for your participation. Please do remember we are stronger together. We need like-minded individuals to look at what's happening, say, should I decide to, I could change a life today. So just a small donation of £3 a month can change your life. Signing up to volunteer can change your life. Speak like I'm doing right now and hope to change your life. There are a ton of ways we can do it. Have a look online at wateraid.org and find out what you can do to change your life for just £3 a month. What have you got to do today that's better than that? Thank you very much for listening.